tonight with Jess Levin, Stephanie Perez, who's our Westchester Community Foundation Fellow, and Evelyn Mtika, who's our Rittenberg artist in resident, and Schuyler Forsythe, who is an artist in residence with us. We're going to start tonight with Evelyn. So Evelyn, I'm going to invite you to share your screen and take it away. Thank you.
Thanks for the lovely introduction. All right, let me just make sure. Everybody see this? Right. Good. All right, my name is Evelyn, and I just wanted to share with you guys my journey with portraiture and form over my undergrad into this residency, which is actually my second residency. Just to give a background about myself, I was raised in West Philadelphia. Actually, I was born in Alaska. I was only there for a year, so I don't know anything about that. But I was raised in West Philadelphia, and I really took to the art scene there. I was engaged with the Mural Arts Foundation. My school, I went to an arts high school, and like for some reason we had majors. So I was an arts major when I was there. And I really took to that, and I went straight into school with going into my visual arts major. And I actually started off with a painting major, but then I walked out with a BFA in ceramics from University of Hartford, which is in Connecticut, probably like an hour or two away, and graduated last year, actually, 2022, which feels like it was a lot longer because in between this residency and when I graduated, I was a resident artist at Northern Clay Center in Minneapolis, Minnesota, from 2022 to 2023. So I've been here as an artist in residence since September. All right. My journey really did start off with these pieces, and Regina is probably familiar, and many of the other staff at Clay Art Center, with these pieces called Notes to My Brothers. These are the first pieces I ever submitted to a show, and I got into Clay Art Center show. I don't remember the name of the show for some reason. I forgot to write it down, but this was the first time that I realized, oh, my artwork can actually get me somewhere. And I continued with this series, Notes to my mom, Notes to my aunt, and I have those in other slides, and Notes to my brothers especially. So I had about 12 cups dedicated to my brothers, and I can show you even more. Here's one of the first, Homesickness, Mama. This was my first kind of big piece. It's about 2 feet tall. It was really hefty, and it sits in my mom's house. And I was exploring Mayolica. People say it differently, Majolica, magic, I don't know. But I was taught Mayolica, and I really experimented with painting my portrait. These are pictures with my mom, and notes that she actually gave to me as I was growing up. And I really took down, and I'll show you in the next slide, I took down some of the notes that she gave to me about the first time she really realized she had me as a daughter. Don't look at it too much, it's really personal. And then we have Homesickness, Auntie. I love my auntie, she's so precious to me. This is a really tall piece, and I just really went in with more portraiture with my aunt and me. And I do have 2 other pieces with my dad and my grandfather, but one didn't make it through, and the other one is with my grandpa. This is my final piece that I did for my senior show in college, my senior thesis. It's Holding You Feels Like a Poem. This was really my first exploration into actual form for a long time before, and my teachers had criticized me deeply with this, and it's not a problem, but I really didn't know how to push my form at all. I was really focusing on painting like my pieces were canvas, and that works for a lot of different people, but I definitely was using it as a scapegoat to not push myself as an artist. So this was really the first time where I was like, I'm gonna do something figurative. This piece is heavy. It's like probably 200 pounds. I did not know how to hollow out forms or anything. So this being my last piece in school was really a symbol of like me moving towards a new work, new stuff, just learning. And I was not confident I was gonna get into a residency after this, but I applied to like 25. And I got into, here's a detail shot. I got into one called Northern Clay Center. Northern Clay Center, I got in as the Emerging Artist BIPOC Fellow. And I started it in October of last year. And it was really daunting for me. My first stop uh, into this residency was the Gathering show. And this is really, it really meant a lot to me. My inspiration here is Adara Willard and Shasani Elaine Dean, who is actually an alum from University of Hartford. This is the first time I actually got to see a congregation of different Black artists coming together and like showing their work. And this really meant a lot to me. For this to be the first thing that I see when I got to Minnesota, which is, if you know, it's pretty white. I was like, okay, I'm in the right place. I'm in the right place. And this residency is different than the one that I'm in now at Play Art Center, in the fact that I only had to make work and I did not have to do any other requirements. Like that was literally it. So I did have to get another job, like I had to live, but it was the first thing I did. Another thing I took, another person that I took inspiration from is Augusta Savage. She is an artist from the Harlem Renaissance. Most of her pieces have not survived over the years because she did not have the resources to keep it or like to cast it in bronze, which is really sad, but at least we have some documentation of it. And I really took to these pieces because they spoke a lot to me, because I love the way that she like took these figures and really like made them into something that had life. And she really took time to add texture to the skin, which is something that I struggled with a lot when I was looking at a lot of busts. I would see stuff that was really soft and really smooth. And to be fair, it's carved out of marble, but like when you think of bust, when you think of portraiture, you really do think of these curvaceous, smooth, feminine figures. And I think that was my reasoning for when I did my first work at Northern Play Center. I was like, I'm not going to smooth out any of these textures. I'm going to keep them as rough as possible. This is the first thing that I did there. This is actually really small. It's about the size of my hand. And I really just had to get myself out of a rut of not making work over the summer. And then here's a detail shot. You can really see that I went in with the textures here. And then this was like the first piece that I started to create, like more informative, called Defining My Movement. And it really just symbolized like me continuing this series of faces and hair and texture. And that was quite fun for me. This is my favorite piece by far, like as of anything that I've made. I don't know if people love it enough, but I really got to play around with some of the glazes in this. And glazing has always been a struggle for me, but I love the underglaze that I had in there, and I love all the textures. And I do this thing with like slab pinching when I go up with my work, and I kept some of that in there. You can see like in the hair here. And I got to add some of my more painterly aspects with like my brush, and that was just quite fun. This one is called I Will Keep Watch for You, and I was playing around with combining the hair over two forms. In my senior show, I had combined two forms, and I was like, I would like to see how that would work for just heads. And this is just like a little bit haunting for me because I love like that eye action in the back, the face just looking at you through this like swirl, and then the eyes being closed in the front. And I have a little detail shot, just like I'm just in love with the textures that faces have. And again, this is like really important for me because having grown up seeing a lot of this texture being smooth and just kind of washed away, and most of the busts that I'd seen or that you're taught in school being things from like Italian Renaissance and stuff that is just like not, it doesn't really include the history of colored people. And for me, this is just really important to kind of delve into this world where I get to also exhibit the diaspora that I grew up around, you know, the Black woman and people of color. Then I really started to play around with more details and more line work. No one knows the heavy load I carry. This piece is surprisingly light. It's probably like 2.5 pounds because the inside is just so thinly made, because I wanted to make sure that I could really get like that kind of delicateness to translate in the piece. And then Revolution, which I was really thinking about, you can kind of see that it has like this like French silhouette. I was thinking about like the toppling of the French and the Haitian Revolution when I was making this. And I was only able to capture two faces in this, but there is a third face in the back. And then my last piece I think I made out of this series is called Compass. And there's 4 different faces on each side. And let's see here. And I really just played around with this texture again. Oops. And then this is me on Mtika showing that. And then after this, I kind of went into a rut. So I started making molds and casts, and then I made more kind of like faces, smaller things. These are about like this size. And then my next stop is here. So after making those pieces, I packed my stuff up and I literally ran into a time conflict because the end of my residency actually was like overlapping with the beginning of my residency here. So I came in about 2 weeks late. So if anybody here is watching and they're my student, I'm so sorry. And then this is the stuff I started thinking of when I first got here. I had already witnessed a bunch of protests over my time growing. And then also there's protests going on now. And I think it's just really empowering to see people come together. And I also was thinking about like The Wiz, which is the Black version of The Wizard of Oz, I think. And I really loved the music, and I loved how people like walk on that yellow brick road, and like there's like this really cool motion to it. So I tried to capture that in my sketches here, and these are going to be the pieces that I'm hoping to present at the upcoming show. And then here's some more sketches, some more face pots, just some more movement, really just trying to capture that movement. And a lot of my stuff has kind of transferred into face jug-esque material, but I just want to be really careful about that because since people have started to find more popularity in face jugs, I think starting in the 80s, people have really forgotten like how to translate these faces to not look like racial caricatures. And so I really am not trying to make my work in line with face jugs, just keeping that in mind. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but that's not really what I'm going for, because those are really spiritual artifacts and I don't have that background. So here's some of the stuff that I started making. You can kind of see like the face over there. The face is best, and then the body I'm still kind of working on, but I think it's really fun because I'm starting to get all those textures in there. And I also have been able, I don't know if you saw, but like in my molds, there's a small little face molds. I started incorporating my faces into small little pieces of mine. And this has been really great for me because a lot of the work that I do right now, since I teach 4 throwing classes, is through adding these molds to my pieces after I'm done. So it's been really nice to kind of like tie that into my throwing work. And yeah, that's really what I've been doing so far. I've really just been tying my work together and like adding faces into small little pieces. And hopefully I can get my figures done, my large figures, for March. And then here's my details, my contacts, screenshot. All right. I'm gonna stop sharing.
Thank you so much, Evelyn. That was wonderful. And when you're ready to stop sharing, we'll bring up Jess Levin. Jess, when you're ready, you can go ahead and share. Thanks.
Sure thing. Just give me 1 second. All right. Y'all can see that okay? Okay, cool. Hello, my name is Jess, and I make whimsical and imaginative art through a queer lens. I'm going to be talking about the work that I've made at CAC over the past year that I've been here, my creative process, some artists I like to take inspiration from, and pieces that I have in progress now. So to start off, I was born in and grew up in Westchester, White Plains to be specific, and I hold a BFA of sculpture that I received in 2022 from SUNY Purchase. I applied to their graphic design program, and I didn't really love it or hate it, but it was just never really enjoyable for me. And there was a time where a freshman advisor, a wonderful woman named Janine Pollock, gave us the advice to take classes that we wanted to take early on while we still had the time to. And on a whim, I took a ceramic sculpture class. And I actually got the last seat in the class, which as a freshman registering for an upper level class, that was extremely lucky. This class led me to having a full-on crisis relating to my major, which eventually led me to change it completely to sculpture from graphic design, and I've been loving it ever since. When I tell people I went to purchase, most of the time they ask, oh, how's their ceramics program? To which I have to reply, there wasn't a ceramics program. There was a sculpture program with a ceramics room that had a couple kilns and a broken gas kiln. In my graduating class, we had about 11 sculpture students, and I was really the only one who primarily worked with ceramics. And like I mentioned before, I was able to take a ceramics class when I was a freshman, and eventually they implemented an advanced ceramics class, which was like invite only for the 3 undergrad and 4 MFA students that were interested in it. I was also teaching a teaching assistant for the class, which is where I learned to fire kilns. And despite this quote unquote ceramics program being so small, I was really able to flourish with the guidance of my ceramics professor and advisor, Nancy Bowen, as well as the nurturing environment of the sculpture department. So the first piece that I'm going to show is Marvin. I hold him very dear to my heart, as in my opinion, this piece helped me figure out what direction I wanted to take my art as my technical skill started to really mature around senior year. Marvin was the first figurative piece that I made fully in ceramics after being inspired by artists like Kathy Rittenberg and Sydney Berkeley. It was something, it was like something clicked in my head when I saw their pieces. It was like a moment of, I could do that too. And I'll show their pieces in a moment. I was making my figures out of fabric primarily before this, with clay, head, hands, and feet. And although I liked how playful these pieces were and how light they were, I wanted to make my figures have more weight, more personality. I wanted them to be grander and have more detail, pretty much. So Marvin depicts a young boy playing with plush toys, living in his own little fantasy world. He was the first piece that I made with a narrative in mind. In this case, the idea is that he's wearing these matching dinosaur pajamas, an essential part of any childhood. And maybe he asked his mom to like sew on some spikes on the back so that he could pretend he's a dinosaur too, but he wears them so much that the stitches are starting to pull away and stuffing is starting to come out. And here are works by Kathy Rittenberg, who meshes together fauna and human in her works, and Sydney Berkeley, who creates very textured and colorful imaginary friends, as she calls them. So I was able to take what I learned making Marvin and apply it to a few other larger figurative sculptures I made, most of which held themes of self-discovery and queer identity. If you're interested in hearing me talk in depth about those pieces, you could check out my artist talk that I did here last year, but otherwise I want to fast forward in time to when I started at CAC last year. So I was 3 months out of undergrad when I got my studio here, and at that point, artist block was like non-existent. I was absolutely itching to make again. And so as soon as I could, I started working on a new sculpture. I often fall victim to the idea that my next sculpture has to be bigger and better than the last. And so this was no exception, of course. So I ended undergrad with these 2 large animal sculptures, Leo and Thomas. And with animals fresh in my mind, I started to work on a lamb. So I find myself especially drawn to female hooved animals, including deer, sheep, and cows, because of the innocent and pure nature of them that could be juxtaposed by their male counterparts having these large and strong horns. To further the sonority, I decided to create this character, Millie, and put her in a dress. With her, I also wanted to capture a moment of just sitting and watching. I'm also a huge fan of making ceramics look like fabric, so giving her a flowy dress was a very fun challenge. With Millie, I started to find a signature of my pieces, which was making them hang off of the surfaces that they sit on, because I really enjoy that extra interaction with the spaces around them, and I think it helps give my pieces life as opposed to just being a sculpture sitting on a pedestal. Millie was also named after my childhood dog, so there's significance in her name as well. After I made Millie, I wanted to scale down my pieces and make them a little more convenient, and I wanted to play around with a more animalistic figure as opposed to a human figure. I also wanted to experiment with the fur texture, and I created this creature mainly modeled after a Highland cow. But I wanted a more whimsical and fantastical element, so I made it into a dragon by just adding some wings. It was at this point where I started to really lean away from realism and more into the stylized versions of these animals. I named this one Stella Luna after the children's book of the same name by Janelle Cannon. So I continued to make dragons of varying sizes, playing around with details like horn shape, fur pattern, tail shape, etc. And this really felt like a turning point for me as I was getting more comfortable with my animals, moving from making depictions of existing ones into making my own hodgepodge creature that I continue to call my dragons. The sleeping form also held significance because I wanted it to feel like the viewer has just come upon a relaxing animal, similar to a dog, maybe taking a nap in a field or otherwise just feeling comfortable in its environment. While I was creating these dragons, I was also working on larger pieces as well, but most of them either didn't end up working out due to structural issues, or I didn't feel the need to fire them to completion because I viewed them more as practice pieces or studies in pose and texture. So in March of this year, I had the privilege of going to Mtika for the first time, where I was exposed to more ceramics and ceramic artists than I had ever seen before. And sometimes I still feel like I'm digesting the amount of things that I saw there. With that, of course, came heaps and heaps of inspiration that I was so excited to apply to my own work. And here are some notable pieces that I saw there. So typically when I'm planning a larger sculpture, I'll start with the design of the character first, and then move on to pose, and then I'll figure out exactly how to actually make it. And here are some examples of character sheets that I have. If I already have an idea in mind, I'll go to Pinterest and I'll find images of outfits, color palettes, design elements that I'm interested in, and create a mood board. With this next larger sculpture, I knew I wanted her to be laying down, and I knew I wanted to incorporate my childhood home's kitchen wallpaper, which you could see in the corner. I struggled a little bit more with the rest of the color palette, but I ended up figuring that out while I was glazing. So this is the design sheet. And this is how she ended up turning out. I ended up calling this piece Dreaming of Places of Childhood, letting the narrative of her dreaming come from that. For the shirt, I ended up incorporating a gingham-esque pattern to reflect the lamp and bed skirt that I had in my bedroom growing up. So this was one of the last pieces before my 2023 show here, Hibernate. And at this point, I was figuring out how I wanted all of these pieces to exist with each other. I chose the name Hibernate because I wanted to immediately plant the idea of transformation and metamorphosis into the viewer's head and have that influence how they were viewing the pieces. And of course, many of my sculptures were sleeping animals living in this imaginary forest, so the name makes sense visually as well. And these are two other pieces I had in my show, Mama Butterfly and Coming Home. Okay, I skipped the slide, sorry. There she is. Mama Butterfly and Coming Home. So I made Mama Butterfly smaller originally, about 14 inches, with the intent of giving her to my mom. I was playing around with the idea of femininity and my relationship to that, and creating a vessel out of that as she's holding her child in her stomach. And after this, I honestly just really wanted to make her larger and see how far I could push my structural skills. So this version of Mama Butterfly that I pictured here stands at about 2 feet tall. So Coming Home was one of the first ideas I had for my show, heavily inspired by my good friend Carrie Madison's Flower House. It was the first wall piece sculpture that I made, and that came with its own set of challenges, like making the piece in multiple parts and figuring out how to actually hang it on the wall. And I was stuck on the idea of having fabric curtains on it as well, really leaning into the homey cottage in a tree stump vibe. And that's all the work that I've made over the past year leading up to my show. You'd think that after pumping out all this work, I'd maybe be tired or want to take a break from ceramics, but you would be wrong. After my show, I was fueled with the need to create sculptures at an even larger scale, which is crazy. And I've also been very entranced by light fixtures and lamps lately, which has been inspiring my work as well. So this is the piece that I'm currently working on. I've been lovingly calling her my Jester baby. And I'm moving into a more theatrical approach with my ideas and designs, which has been very fun exploring. I feel like my color palettes typically change with the seasons, and as we're moving into colder weather, I find myself drawn to the blues and purples contrasted with the yellows as well. I'm also very interested in ceramic furniture, which I think is something a lot of ceramic artists tend to find compelling, and making my pieces their own pedestals. And this way I can customize the pedestal to her and let it reflect the piece that sits on it. I've decided to balance out the very textured creature with a more subtle and ornate design on the pedestal, and then I cut out shapes so the entire thing doubles as a light fixture. And this brings us to the present. There are a few other smaller guys that I'm working on, and I'm excited to keep making and see how far I can push myself over the next year. Thanks for listening.
Thanks so much, Jess. That was fantastic. And now we're going to hear from Schuyler. Schuyler, you can go ahead and share your screen. Thanks.
One moment, sorry. Can you see it? Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for coming to this presentation. For those of you I haven't met yet in the studio or around the Clay Arts Center, I'm Schuyler Forsythe. I'm one of the artists in residence for this year. And today I'm going to be kind of doing a brief overview of my ceramic journey that has led me to coming to Clay Arts Center and to work with you all in discussing the direction my ceramics has taken over the past 2 years and where I'd like to take it here while I'm at CIC. A little bit about me. I'm originally from upstate New York in the Hudson Valley. I was fortunate enough to grow up in a really beautiful and culturally abundant place. Both of my parents are working artists, and I was lucky enough to be surrounded by art throughout my childhood. Both of my parents are incredible illustrators. They own a silk screening company together, and but they've always had other jobs to support us and to support the art. My mom's a school teacher, and my father worked as a craftsman who did historically accurate building restorations when I grew up. So I was around a lot of architecture, and from a young age was very inspired by craftsmen and working with your hands. I'm very lucky to have very supportive parents and a very supportive partner. And this is my dog, Luna. Okay, so in 2016, I was attending SUNY New Paltz. I was working towards my photo BFA at the time, and I was doing that full time until about 2019 when my partner and I moved to San Diego, where he was pursuing a second degree in nursing. So at that time, after doing a semester online, I had taken a sabbatical from school and was working full time as a photographer in Southern California. From a young age, I had kind of been working in the realm of photography and was working towards being a documentary photographer when in 2020, the pandemic hit, and we were both kind of jobless, we were housebound, and I was kind of losing steam with my artistic practice at the time. I was craving something different, but it wasn't until schools had opened up online again that I, on a whim, took a Intro to Ceramics course. 3,000 miles away, like working on pieces in my bedroom. I would go to class on Zoom. And that's when I was introduced to Anat Shifton, who went on to become an incredible professor and mentor of mine, who really inspired me to get into ceramics. And so after that semester online, I applied into the BFA program. And after getting in, we moved back to New York right before 2021. I had the incredible opportunity to work with both Anat and Brian Suez, who really changed how I perceive the possibilities of ceramic art and opened my eyes to the possibilities of the medium, something I hadn't really worked with before, except for doing ceramics in high school. So it really changed what that meant to me as I progressed my practice. When I first started the BFA program, I was doing kind of like the usual wheel throwing, really diving into a lot of the processes and the techniques, finding my voice and my artistic direction. It was during this time that I really started to kind of conceptualize the kind of work that I wanted to be making. And I was really inspired by 19th and 20th century naturalism and realizing the types of ceramics that I was drawn to and the types of practices that were exploring unique possibilities within the ceramics. So, you know, such as artists as Ricky Bartlett, Russell Rankle, Beth Cattleman, to name a few. It's hard to discuss inspiration because it feels like it must be endless. So I do a lot of reading and I find a lot of inspiration in the places that I live. But being able to look up to ceramic artists who really inspire me to explore and not be self-limiting with what I thought were the bounds of the ceramic medium or what other ceramic artists put the medium into the kind of box. It's really exciting to be inspired by people who are pushing the bounds of the medium. So at this time in school, I was really drawn to the process of slip casting and working with slip as a medium. It created really exciting challenges for me, as well as allowing me to explore surface in ways that I had not realized yet were possible. I was kind of fast tracking with the BFA. I was only in the program for about 2 years since I'd already been in the fine arts program for about 4 years prior. So I was taking solely ceramic studio classes, working maybe 12 to 14 hours a day in the studio, really trying to make the most of my time there. So I really tried to experiment however possible. And at the time, I was exploring ceramics as a design element. So drawing a lot of inspiration from the arts and crafts movement, things inspired by nature and simplicity. For these pieces, I was heavily inspired by Japanese design styles, where they're incorporating natural elements such as raw wood and relating back to the ideas of visual balance and harmony. These were made from wood that I cut and processed from a redwood tree in my parents' yard. I was exploring different ways with working with slip casting, and experimenting with this really led me into this new way of working where I was physically drawing slip cast circles by hand with ketchup, mustard bottles, cake decorating bottles, anything that worked I was using. Is a very rhythmic process, and it became almost kind of like this dance I was doing with the clay, getting the muscle memory from the act of drawing them, working really instinctively to mix my colors, timing everything to keep the process going. Is very therapeutic, but also a really meticulous process. This is another example of a piece that was meant to be part of a living space. So here I was really trying to capture kind of that sense of visual harmony, while also trying to capture a feeling of a moment in time. So the circles are really meant to embody kind of a sense of landscape through the visual texture, while the colors are what I consider to be setting the mood of the piece. And representing kind of a specific feeling, you get somewhat of an indescribable feeling. That a lot of my work at this time was relating to having that sense of belonging, and how we kind of impose these feelings through existing in specific moments in time. So how we echo the landscapes that surround us, and how we identify the self with what we see around us. During this time, I was really getting into the language of symbols, and how this can play a deeper role in my work as I was progressing. I became more and more interested in literal representations of the world around me, and I started to kind of branch out from this abstractedness. So I was and I still am particularly fascinated with the natural world and the characters within it. So I have really self-identified in moments with animals and with nature, and how symbolic of a role they have played in my life. And so this is when I created my first somewhat realistic sculpture of a blue heron. Here you can see some process photos. This is from a collaborative outdoor show where I was given the story of a Sankofa bird and given the opportunity to create something ceramic based on this cultural myth. So this was really the first time I had ever attempted sculpting in this way, and it really opened my eyes to where I saw my ceramic practice going, as well as inspiring the work that I went on to make for my thesis exhibition, which was later that year. So these are some photos from my thesis exhibition entitled "Till the Ends of the Earth." This was really inspired by my time living out west. We had spent years traveling on the West Coast prior to moving there, but after living and spending so much time connecting with the desert landscape, I really found myself drawn to the sense of belonging that I had found there, also in conjunction with that kind of profound loneliness that we were all feeling in the world at that time. So I was really excited to create these pieces, as well as to dive into the symbolism that they allowed me to create. So I was really drawn to these specific elements because of personal interactions I had had with each. And through experimenting with my glazed surface, I was really able to kind of set a tone for the installation. And I have been doing a lot of reading about dreams at the time and how animals can be messengers. This really led me into lore of the black dog and the 19th century writings such as Hound of Heaven by Francis Thompson, as well as other writings by naturalists at the time, reading a lot of Ruskin, things like that. This is a close-up shot of the slip-casted sun that I created for the installation. This was really something I wanted to attempt to make. It was a very large plaster mold, as well as incorporating something that was colored into the exhibition to show that can explore with surface, and that the black wasn't necessarily because I couldn't come up with a surface, but rather because it set a very particular mood that I needed for the piece. I also have some in progress shots in the next slide. So this was a rather ambitious mold for me. You know, I had casted around 8 pieces each. They take around 5 hours a piece from start to finish before they're even bisqued. So I chose to exhibit the one that I found was most fitting for the narrative, but I really learned a lot from this process, and I look forward to exploring more with slip casting, whether that's here at CAC or just as my practice progresses. These are some better detailed shots of the sculptures included in the exhibition. At the time, I was really drawn to this monotone surface and the visual language it allowed me to convey. But as I progress in my practice, I'm craving something more, something different from my surfaces. And so this has been something I'm experimenting with. And for the pieces that will be exhibited here at CAC in June, I'm really looking forward to playing with surface and maybe attempting some different type of atmospheres and stuff that are beyond reduction and oxidation. So I'm looking forward to exploring more of my individualism with surfaces. I'm feeling really inspired by the classes that I'm teaching. They're really kind of revealing things to myself about my process and about the things that I'm drawn to, as well as things that I aspire to create that maybe I hadn't previously realized were aspects of ceramics I really enjoy. So here's a little bit of process photos from those sculptures. At the time, I was working from solid sculptures that I would hollow out, and I'm really trying to explore different ways of building without compromising the forms or the presence they have. So I might continue on with the building plan that I have, but I'm trying to branch out and try different techniques to see if those will work. And then, as I was saying previously, I really draw a lot of inspiration from my experiences and from the places that I've been and when I've lived in these places at certain times in my life and what they represent. So as a very active kind of outdoors person, I find the natural world is something that is really hard for me to escape mentally. Not that I want to, but it's just kind of this repetitive theme in my life, whether it's like the fox that's staring me down on my drive home, or the hawk that lands right at my window, or just these kind of weird, eerie occurrences that really resonate with me. So something I feel like I have to follow through with. And so, you know, I'm very excited to continue with these new themes and new narratives with the work that I'm creating here at CAC. Before coming to CAC, I was living in Southern Oregon, which I found to be a really inspiring place. The landscape was really beautiful, and everything about it was a really great experience over the past year, but it was kind of a bit of a clay desert. There wasn't really much going on as far as opportunities or like-minded artists, things like that. So that was when I started applying for ceramic residencies, and I was happy to have found the community at Clay Art Center. These are some random odds and ends, you know, I created for the CAC marketplace, some pine cone earrings I casted from a tree in my yard, some wall shelves, and a sketch I'm currently working on for a new piece. Thanks so much for listening to my presentation. If I haven't already met you, I look forward to meeting you in the future. I want to thank Clay Art Center for hosting me as a resident for this over the next year, and thank the community for being so kind and supportive. I've genuinely had such a good experience meeting everybody at Clay Art Center. Here's some info. Don't hesitate to reach out if you'd like to.
Thank you, Schuyler. Excellent presentation. Thank you so much. And now we're going to hear from Stephanie Perez, who is our Westchester Community Foundation Fellow.
Okay, hello everyone. Thanks for coming and supporting tonight. Let me just share my screen. Okay, so yeah, I'm Stephanie Perez. I'm the Westchester Community Fellow for this year. And this slideshow is going to be a little bit of a background of who I am and how I got into this position where I am now. And we'll look at some current studio things I'm working on and what I hope to do in the future during this residency. So about me, originally I am from the Bronx. Growing up, I did move around a lot though. So I went from like the Bronx to Yonkers to Connecticut, a different place in Connecticut, Portchester, and now I'm currently residing in Harrison. I've always been really interested in art. Luckily, it was encouraged by both of my parents. I would consider both of my parents artists. I don't know if they both would, but my mom, um, was always like she painted a lot. She did a lot of realistic scenery things. And my dad really, you'll see a little bit later on, he really does whatever he wants. This picture on the right is actually the first clay creation I ever made in like the first grade. I got to take like one clay class. It was a flying squirrel. You can't really tell that now, but I thought it was fun to include. So moving on, I want to delve into how I first started doing ceramics. It was at the Clay Art Center in the Around the World in Clay class. Um, these are this is one mosaic I made, and this is a figure I made. I believe we had a model come in for this one, so we sculpted it from them. At the time, it was taught by Sarah Coble. I don't think she's around at the Clay Art Center anymore, but I did see her recently at Hand in Hand a few years ago. I really enjoyed taking this class, and I took it throughout the rest of my years in high school. I moved to Portchester for my sophomore year, so then I was in this class from sophomore to senior year. Since since I was in this class, they allowed me to like intern. So I also worked as a summer camp assistant for those 3 summers. After I graduated high school, I immediately went off to college. I went to Fordham University. I did get my Bachelor's of Science. I double majored in psychology and sociology. Um, and I graduated, during the start of the pandemic. And as that was a very weird and stressful time, I kind of just went in and worked at a restaurant for a while, which probably was not the best idea, and it really brought me down. And luckily, I was able to come back as an assistant briefly. And I have this memory of working as an assistant during the summer camp, and it was Austin Coudray, the past resident artist at the Clay Art Center as the teacher, and he allowed me to like make my own project and present it and demo it to the kids. And I thought that was really, really nice. And a few months after that, I just started teaching. So I wanted to just quickly look at some like teaching highlights. For one, I teach a lot of the Around the World in Clay, the same class that I was in when I was in high school. I'm currently teaching the 7 and 8-year-olds, the middle schoolers, and the high schoolers. I also teach Spark, which is a group of special needs young adults. We have a really fun time in that class. And then, not currently, but over the past few years, I have taught at all of the elementary schools in Portchester for their after-school program. And I've worked on 2 separate mosaic projects at the middle school. This picture on the right is the tiles that we made for this mosaic project. They put them up on these posts that were going up into the giving garden that they have outside of the middle school. And then the most recent mosaic project that we finished. Here's some in progress pictures. So all these little tiles we made with the kids in their classes at the middle school, and then I was also part of the process of actually installing the piece. I think it ended up coming out really nicely. And this is August, the studio manager, and Prinda, the program manager here. So moving on to some inspirations and influences of my own work. I'm really interested in the surrealistic movement, and specifically Dali. I really just like the idea of creating like things using unconscious automation. And I like these pictures that Dali did here on the right. especially the one at the top. It was called The Face of War, and it's one major face and then smaller faces that went on to like infinity, and it was kind of representative of the number of people that he felt were like hurt and affected by the war. And another influence of mine are like a lot of psychological and sociological theories or ideas. I did major in it, so all that stuff is always in the back of my head in some way. I put up this little graph of talking about the phenomenon of the uncanny valley, which is basically just the idea that people feel a sense of like discomfort the more similar something is to a human, like humanoid, like kind of like AI or aliens can be. But it, they end up, it's like it's not quite human-like. It's almost there, but it makes people kind of feel uncomfortable. And then this picture, oops, this picture at the bottom is from the Scanzi test, which was, it used to be used as a psychological test that would like reveal the person's unconscious beliefs, but it's obviously like kind of dismissed as unscientific, but I do think it's an interesting approach. And my last big influence is Roberto Perez. This is a piece by him on the side. And yes, Roberto Perez is my dad. He has always been like a really big inspiration for me. He draws, he paints, he works with resin, he carves wood and stone. He does everything. And you can see he really kind of plays around with fantasy and these characters, but also a lot of it is the human form that he is making. And I always found this really interesting because even though the initial subject of his piece stayed the same, the style he did it in was always different. Like I would never have thought any of these pieces were made by like the same person. And there's just some more of his sculptures that he did. This one on the right is one that he's working on right now. So yeah, his mediums are really vast. So now this is the beginning of some of my own work that I did. I did these in 2021 and 2022. This first piece is Ghosts. It is a remake of a piece that I did in high school. I just really like the idea of these rough forms that don't have any faces or glaze or anything on them. And then I decided to use them as little models to put these heads on in the rest of the pictures. Here I was just playing with different glaze combinations and things. Here are some more. I really contemplated whether I should leave this one on the left end because I really don't like it. I think that the points coming off of the face kind of give a more meaty look than fleshy, but I'm still learning. And I did like the idea of having like kind of a mask as a separate piece to the artwork. This one in the middle, I was just trying out different techniques in making my faces. This one is kind of more smooth, and this one kind of looks like a grown-up version of the little one. And then this one on the right, reptilian. I wish I had a better picture of it. I ended up selling it at I think it was the market last year. But I did like how I like carved in kind of a cross-hatching texture before I put the glaze on. I think it made the glaze sit nicely into the grooves. And then I started to experiment with making bigger pieces. Even though I was doing like independent study and I was taking some classes at Clay Art Center during this time, I did end up doing a lot of my work at home. And so transferring it to and from the studio was not good for me. I ended up breaking a lot of things in that process. But I think these ones came out pretty good. This first one, the idea was that I was going to make multiple heads and be able to like swap them out. Um, but this was actually like the second head, or maybe the third I made. The first one, I really liked it. I don't really know what happened with the glaze. It came out really weird, so this was like a remake of it. At this point, I kind of like it better without the head on at all. It just looks like a little empty circle. Um, this one in the middle, I actually really liked a lot. I was experimenting with shading with black colored slip on the body, and then it was just blue slip for the face. It was only bisque, but I think I want to continue to do more of these small figures in the future. Same with the one on the right. I don't like how it came out as much, but I was playing with the face and the hair for these. A few more recent things that I wanted to show were these two pieces. This one on the left is from a bowl making workshop that I worked next to John Green, who's also a past resident artist. We did a class on bowl making at the ice cream social before it closed down. So this was my bowl. The eye actually comes out so you can use both sides. I have not used it, but I like it as a decoration. And then I was also able to be a part of a mold making workshop, and I made this face mold, and I really like it, and I want to continue to I want to make a whole bunch of these and attach them to like a bigger form and do something with that during this residency time. And now we're looking at my current studio. I have a whole lot of space now. I'm feeling like I'm living luxurious. This picture on the right are just a bunch of kids demos that I have in various stages. Um, I'm I'm teaching 5 classes right now, so I've got a lot of different stuff going on. And this picture at the bottom I wanted to include just because this is a a little sculpture that one of my kids made of me last year. So I keep that as inspiration. And these are some things I have in the works. This face on the left side, I just bisqued. I was really playing with underglazes. I finally was able to get a few of my own of different colors. So I'm playing with like layering them and having them over different textures and things. This picture in the middle are some little holiday ornaments I made, and then some little face pendants. They have not come out of the kiln fully yet. There were some issues with the kiln, so I have to refire them all, but hopefully we'll see them soon. I know that the little bears and the bunny aren't really like my style, but I feel like I was really channeling like my style that I make a lot of the kids demos in, just because it's like for a holiday, I wanted to make a more simple but like refined little bears look. And then this is a cup on the right side I made after sitting into Austin's class again more recently. Unfortunately, I underglazed on Cone 10 clay, so I do not really know what I'm going to do with it from here. If I want to keep the colors, but that's okay. And then this is the last piece that I am working on. It's the most recent of them all. It was hard to get a good picture of it just because it's supposed to be a wall hanging, but I haven't fired it yet, or well, it's in the kiln right now. And it was really delicate. I didn't want to end up breaking it, but it has 3 faces in total on the sides. And it's like it's with these like organic kind of forms. And again, I was playing with the shading using underglazes. I think I want to continue to use these organic forms and combine them with my faces on larger pieces going forward in this residency, along with trying out different underglazing techniques and like using more washes and things. I feel like maybe I want to try that instead of focusing on the like shiny glazes, just because I feel like I often end up liking my pieces before I glaze them better than after. But I think so I might just lean into that. But that's all. Thank you for watching. Here's my Instagram and my email. If you want to email me for any reason, you can. Thank you all.
Thank you so much, Stephanie. So much. They were excellent presentations, and thanks everybody for joining us tonight at Clay Arts Centre, and we'll see you again soon.